Chapter 7. The Story. "I expect, Mark," said the child. "Do you like better I call you Mark all the time than dwarf? Then I will. I do really expect you'll have to get me a clean dress to put on." She held up her frock, and the dwarf looked at it anxiously. It was certainly very dirty. The front was entirely covered with mud, and matters had not been improved by her scrubbing it with leaves that she pulled off the trees as they came along. "Dear me, Snow White," said the dwarf. "This is pretty bad, isn't it?" "Yes," said the child. "It is too bad. You'll have to get me another. What kind will you get?" "Well," said the dwarf slowly, "you see, Wait a minute, Snow White." He went into the house, and the child waited cheerfully, sitting in the root seat. Of course, he would find a dress. He had all the other things, and most probably likely there was a box that had dresses and things in it. She hoped it would be blue, because she was tired of the pink one. There might be a hat, too. When you had that kind of box, it was just as easy to have everything as only something. A pink velvet hat with white feathers like the lady in the circus? The child sighed comfortably and folded her hands and watched the robins pulling up worms on the green. But the dwarf went into the bedroom and began pulling out drawers and opening chests with a perplexed air. Piles of handkerchiefs, socks, underwear, all of the finest and best. Gray suits like the one he had on, but never a sign of a blue dress. He took down a dressing gown from a peg and looked it over anxiously. It was of brown velvet, soft and comfortable looking, but it had evidently been lived in a good deal and it smelt of smoke. No, that would never do. He hung it up again and looked about him helplessly. Suddenly, his brow cleared and his eyes darkened. He laughed, not his usual melodious chuckle, but the short, harsh note that the child compared to a bark. "Why not?" he said. "It's all in the family." He opened a deep, carved chest that stood in a corner. The smell that came from it was sweet and old, and seemed to belong to far countries. He hunted in the corners and presently brought out a folded paper, soft and foreign-looking. This he opened and took out and shook out a shawl or scarf of eastern silk, pale blue, covered with butterflies and birds in bright embroidery. He looked at it grimly for a moment, then he shut the chest, for the child was calling, "Mark, where are you?" and hastened out. "Never I thought you were coming," said the child. "See at that robin, Mark? He ate all the worm 5 times longer as him, and now he's trying to get away that other ones. I told him he mustn't, and he will. Isn't he greedy?" "He's the greediest robin on the place," said the dwarf. "I mean to put him on an allowance some day. See here, Snow White, I'm awfully sorry, but I can't find a dress for you." The child opened great eyes at him. "Can't find one, Mark? Has you looked?" "Yes, I've looked everywhere, but there really doesn't seem to be one, so I thought, perhaps—" "But not in all the boxes you've looked, Mark?" cried the child. "Why, you got everything, don't you remember? You did for dinner." "Yes, but that was different," the dwarf said. "Dresses didn't come in china pots, nor in tin cans either." No, he didn't think it would be of any use to stamp his foot and say, "Bring a blue dress this minute." But look here, wouldn't this do? Couldn't she wrap herself up in this while he washed her dress? He held up the gay thing, and at sight of it the child clasped her hands together and then flung them out with a gesture that made him wince. But it was the most beautiful thing in the world, the child said. But it was better than dresses, ever and ever so much better, because there were no buttons. And she might dress up in it? This would be fun, like the pictures she would be in the Japanesey book at home. Did he ever see the Japanesey book? But it was on the big table in the long parlor, and he could see it any time he went in if his hands were clean. Always he had to show his hands to make sure they were clean. And she would be like in the pictures, and he was a very nice dwarf, and she loved him. In a wonderfully short time, the child was enveloped in the blue silk shawl, and sitting on the kitchen table cross-legged like a small idol, watching the dwarf while he washed the dress. He was handy enough at the washing, and before long, the pink frock was moderately clean. Some of the stains would not come out, and could hardly be blamed for it, and was flapping in the wind on a low-hanging branch. Now, the child said to the dwarf, was the time for him to tell her a story. What story? Oh, a story about a dwarf. Any of the dwarfs he used to know, only except the yellow dwarf, or the 7 ones in the wood, or the one in Snow White and Rosy Red, because she knowed those herself. The dwarf smiled, and then frowned. Then he lighted his pipe and smoked for a time in silence while the child waited with expectant eyes. Then, after about a week, she thought, he began. "Once upon a time." The child nodded and drew a long breath of relief. She had not been sure that he would know the right way to tell a story, but he did, and it was all right. Once upon a time, Snow White, there was a man. Not a man, a dwarf, cried the child. You're right, said Mark Ellery. I made a mistake, Snow White, not a man, a dwarf. I'll begin again if you like. Once upon a time, there was a dwarf. That's right, said the child. She drew the blue shawl around her and sighed with pleasure. Go on, Mark. The trouble is, he went on, he, this dwarf, was born a man-thing, a man-child. It was not till his nurse dropped him that it was settled that he was to be a dwarf thing and never a man. That was unfortunate, you see, for he had some thing born with him that a dwarf has no business with. What things? Oh, nothing much. A heart and brains and feelings, that kind of thing. Feelings? If you pinched him, did it hurt just like a man? You would have thought he was a man sometimes if you had not seen him. The trouble was, his mother let him grow up thinking he was a man. She loved him very much, you see, and she was a foolish woman. She taught him to think that the inside of a man was what mattered, and if that were all right, if he were clean and kind and right-minded, and perhaps neither a fool nor a coward, people would not mind about the outside. He grew up thinking that. Was he quite stupid, the child asked. He must have been, I think, Mark. Yes, he was very stupid, Snow White. Because he might have looked in the glass, you know? Of course he might. He did now and then. But he thought that other people, were like his mother, you see, and they weren't. That was all. He was very rich, this dwarf. The child's eyes brightened. The story had been rather stupid so far, but now things were going to begin. Did he live in a gold house, she asked? Did he have chariots and crowns and treasure? Bags and bags of treasure? Was there a princess in it? When was he going to tell her about her? Why didn't he go on? I can't go on if he talks, Snow White. He was rich, I say, and for that reason everybody made believe that he was a man and treated him like one. Silly? Yes, very silly. But he was stupid, as you say, and he thought it was all right, and everybody was kind, and his mother loved him, and so he grew up. But he still stayed a dwarf? Yes, still a dwarf. What like did he look? Was he puffily frightful with great goggle eyes and a long twisty nose? Was he green? You said once you was green, Mark, before you turned brown. Yes, he was rather green. Not a bright green, you understand, just a dull, blind sort of green. Was goggle eyes? No, I don't know that they goggled particularly, Snow White. I hope not. Well, when he was grown up, only he never grew up, his mother died. The child was trying hard to be good, but her patience gave out at last. The man was silent so long. What is the matter with you, Mark? I think this is a stupid story. Didn't anything happen to him at all? Why do you bark? Yes, things happened to him. This is a slow story, Snow White, and you must have patience. You see, I never told it before, and the words don't come just as I want to have them. The child nodded sympathetically and promised to be patient. She knew how it was herself sometimes when she tried to tell a story what she didn't know very well. Didn't he know this one very well, perhaps? Was there another he knowed better? No other I know of half as well, little girl. His mother died, I say, and then he met the princess. The child beamed again. Was she beautiful as the day? Did she live in an ivory tower and let her hair down out the window? Was there dragons? Did the dwarf fall in love with her right the minute he seed her? Well, the tower was brown, said the dwarf, brown stone. No, she didn't let her hair down, and there were no dragons. Quite the contrary, the door was always open, and the way seemed clear. But she was beautiful, and he fell in love with her. Oh, yes. She had soft, clear eyes and soft, pale cheeks, and soft, dark hair. Everything about her was soft and sweet, and, well, this dwarf fell in love with her and wanted to marry her. Yes, as you say, they always do. For a time, a very long time, he did not dare to think of it even being possible that she could love him. He would have been content and thankful just to be her friend, just to be allowed to see her now and then and take her hand and feel her smile through and through him like wine. But her eyes were so soft, and she looked at him so that he asked her, Mark, what for do you keep stopping like that? Never you must when you're telling a story. They always go right on. What was I saying? The dwarf looked at the child with the eyes that seemed not to see her, but something beyond her. What was I saying, Snow White? He asked her would she marry him, said the child promptly. And she said no, indeed. She wouldn't do nothing of the kind. She was going to marry a beautiful prince with... I beg your pardon, Snow White. You are wrong this time. She said she would marry him. She looked at him with her soft eyes and said she loved him. She said the kind of things his mother had said, and the dwarf, being stupid, believed her. The child bubbled over with laughter. Wasn't he silly? But of course she didn't, Mark. Of course not. But he thought she was going to, so he built a house. Well, we'll call it a palace if you like, Snow White. Perhaps it was as good as some palaces. At any rate, it was the best he could build, and he filled it full of things. What kind of things? Oh, pictures and statues and draperies, and yes, silver and gold and jewels, any quantity of jewels. And he sent abroad for silks and satins and shawls. Like this one I've got on? Very like it. He meant to have in the house everything that her heart could desire, so that when she wished for anything, he could say, "Here it is, ready for you, my beloved." Well, and so the dwarf worked away and heaped up treasures, the regular dwarf way, and saw the princess every day and was happy. And she looked at him with her soft eyes and told him she loved him. And so it came near the time of the wedding. Then, one day, "The prince came!" cried the child, jumping up and down and clapping her hands. "I know. Let me tell a little bit now, Mark, may I? Well, the prince came, and he was tall and handsome, with golden hair and blue eyes, and he was ever and ever so much richer than the dwarf, and so the princess fell in love with him the minute she seed him, and he fell in love with her too, and said, 'This is my princess,' and she said, 'This is my prince.' Isn't that the way, Mark?" "Precisely," said the dwarf. "I couldn't have told it better myself, Snow White." "Perhaps not so well. The prince was richer and handsomer and younger, and that settled it. It always does, doesn't it?" "And then what became of the dwarf, Mark?" "Oh, it doesn't matter what became of the dwarf, does it? He was only a dwarf, you know. The story always ends when the prince and the princess are married. They lived happily ever after. That's the end, don't you remember?" The child reflected with a puzzled look. "Yes," she said presently. "But you see, Mark, this is a different kind of story. That other kind is when you begin with the princess and tell all about her, and then the dwarf just comes in and is perfectly horrid, and then the prince comes, and so, but this story begins with the dwarf, don't you see?" "What difference does that make, Snow White? Nobody cares what becomes of a dwarf." "But yes, but when it's his own story, Mark. But aren't you stupid? And besides, them was all horrid, and this was a nice dwarf. Was he like you, Mark?" "A little, perhaps." "Then he was very nice, and I love him like this." The child threw her arms around the dwarf and gave him a strangling hug. Then she drew back and looked at him. "It seems," she said, "as if most likely perhaps I loved you better than princess. Do you suppose could I?" The dwarf's eyes were very kind as she looked at her, but he shook his head and loosened the little arms gently. "No, Snow White," he said, "I don't believe you could. But as to this other dwarf, there isn't very much to tell. He gave her back her freedom, as they call it in the books, and then he shut up the fine house and went away." "Where'd he go?" "Oh, he went everywhere, or pretty near it. He traveled and saw strange places and people, but nothing much mattered to him. And at last, he found there was only one country he could really care to see, and that was the country that has never been discovered." "Then how do you know he was there, Mark? But where was it? Was it like east of the sun and west of the moon? And the old women's told him about it?" "Yes, perhaps. At least his mother used to tell him about it. But he never thought then. He didn't think much about it. But now he was tired and nothing mattered. So he thought he would go and see that country, if it were really there, and possibly he might find his mother, if the things she said were true." "So, did I say his mother was dead?" "So I did." "Oh well, never mind that now. So he bought a key that would open the door of that country. Yes, something like that thing I called a key. And then he came to a place, well, it was something like this place, Snow White. He wanted to be quiet, you see, for some time before he went away. He wanted to be alone and think, gather up threads and thoughts of his life and try and straighten them into something like an even skein. Then, if he were allowed, if there should be any possibility that he might take them with him, he could say to his mother, he could excuse himself, he could tell her. "Mark," said the child, "do you know what I think?" The man started and looked at her. "What do you think, Snow White?" "Yes, I think you're talking perfect foolishness. I don't know one word that you're saying, and I don't believe you do either." "No more I do, Snow White. I think this is enough story, don't you? You see, I was right. It didn't matter what became of the dwarf. Let us come out and feed the birds." "Let's," said the child.